Good afternoon, everybody. This is Rebecca Martin. I am the Executive Director of NASH, and I am thrilled to be welcoming you to the first in our webinar series on diversifying the faculty. As many of you know, we have a RISE-UPP Alliance, which we are going to be talking about today. Many of you are part of the extended network that's in this alliance, and others of you are broader membership across NASH. And we're very, very happy to have all of you here. We're very excited about being able to share this initiative with you and look forward over the months to come with sharing our progress as this moves forward. Next slide, Rohit. So today we are going to just focus on the Alliance and give you an overview of the work. We have two core model partners, the University System of Maryland and the University of California system. They will each be talking about their model for diversifying the faculty. We'll hear from our social science research team, and we will get to take a look at the newly launched just today RISE-UPP website, where you can find out more information about the initiative. Next slide, Rohit. So here's just a little bit of housekeeping. During the webinar, please introduce yourself in the chat. We have more than 50 people already. We are expecting more, so we don't have time to go around the room and introduce, but you can do that in the chat just so everybody knows who's on the line with us. Please feel free to post a question in the chat at any time during the meeting, and we will keep an eye on it and try to make sure your questions get to our speakers. Mute yourself when you are not speaking, and if you do speak, please be cognizant of the time. We want to be sure that we have as much time for your questions as well as our presentations as we can. Next slide. So with this, I am very pleased to turn this over to Dr. Blessing Inekwe, who is the Executive Director of the RISE-UPP Alliance, and she is going to kick this off. Turning it over to you, Blessing.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you all for joining us today. We're really excited to discuss the alliance that we've been working on for quite a bit, and we kicked off in August. So we are looking at our alliance, and the name of the alliance is Reimagining STEM Equity, Utilizing Postdoctoral Pathways. And so in this, next slide. So we're really looking at distilling the best practices of two of our core model partners, as Rebecca mentioned, that really utilize a university system approach to have recruiting and transitioning minoritized postdoctoral scholars into tenure-track faculty positions. And our two core model partners are the University System of Maryland's AGAP Promise Academy Alliance, as well as the University of California's President's Postdoctoral Fellowship Program. And so those two utilize kind of different ways of approaching a system-wide approach to the recruitment and transition of minoritized postdoctoral scholars. And you'll hear more about that from each of our presenters today. But we also wanted to highlight our scaling partners who have joined us in this alliance. That is the University of North Carolina system, the University of Texas system, as well as the Texas A&M University system. And they're really trying to look at both models and see what elements might they replicate or adapt to utilize in their own particular context. We know systems are really different. And so trying to take some of the best practices from two of our core model partners and utilizing it in their own context. All of these systems have AGAP funding, and so there's some similarities there, as well as having participating MSIs. Next slide, please. And so just kind of taking a step back and thinking about where many initiatives happen. We often see initiatives like these happening at the institutional level. So you might see one university kind of trying to approach different ways of transitioning postdocs into tenure-track faculty positions. But we wanted to kind of expand upon that. Next slide, please. And thinking kind of more at the university system approach as the model partner. So we have the AGAP Promise Alliance Academy that has 6 institutions involved, and Robin Krasinski will tell us more about the different ways in which the Maryland AGAP Promise Academy Alliance works, but we work within the system. Next slide, please. And then the University of California President's Postdoctoral Fellowship Program that also has a university system approach and has 10 participating universities as part of their system alliance. Next slide, please. So where includes, and so we're going to take a moment. We want to make this interactive as possible. I forgot about this one poll popping up now. And we want to hear from you as the audience. Is your institution part of a cross-campus collaboration with other institutions within your system? Yes, no, or maybe you're unsure. We want to get a sense of where the audience lies. Okay, we about have half participation at this point. Okay, it's pretty spread across. We have a majority having some cross campus collaborations. So you might be interested in this type of approach. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll now. And get back to discussing how we're approaching it from an alliance perspective. So RISE-UPP is looking at it from a consortia of systems, really thinking through how multiple university systems can work together towards expanding the pipeline for minoritized postdocs, particularly in the STEM fields. Next slide. And how we're going to approach this is really thinking of these 4 areas of evidence-based interventions, and hoping that as we continue to work on all of these elements, we can increase not only the number of minoritized faculty in STEM, but increase the retention of these faculty members as well. So we're looking at the postdocs themselves. Postdoctoral time is a time where you're really building on your skills, and we are here to help with their professional development, really helping to build out that community support within their systems, but also across the systems. And in that, we're also going to be building their network. Invariably, having a multitude of systems with 24 institutions involved in this will expand their network and the potential for cross collaboration, as well as having very specified mentorship approaches. And with these mentors, we want to help support the mentors as well through mentor training and other various ways of supporting their mentors. Some approaches might be having a course release for mentors who are focused on part of this program, or being able to provide them with a small stipend. So really thinking through how we can address mentors and also recognize their labor. We know that mentorship is essential, especially in postdoc life, but how can we help recognize the mentors and the work that they're doing towards helping build out skills for our postdocs? We're also looking at the academic environment. So while we can have very competitive, highly skilled postdoctoral scholars with fabulous mentors, what is the academic climate in which they're engaging in? Is the department ready? And so thinking through departmental readiness assessments and how those assessments might increase improvement in the academic climate at the institutional and unit levels. And then thinking about institutional and system transformation, thinking about what policies or processes might we approach and fine tune to really help expand the pipeline. And then looking at the university system pathways. So facilitating that recruitment and conversion within the systems or maybe across the systems. We now have 5 systems that are participating. And so what might it look like for postdocs to be recruited and retained within their system or potentially go to another system? Next slide, please. So this is another kind of highlight of the different partners that we're working together. We talked about the core model partners, and we talked a little bit about the scaling partners. Just to kind of delve down a little bit more, the Texas A&M University System has 5 participating institutions. The University of Texas System has 8 participating institutions, and the University of North Carolina System has 5 participating institutions. And the University System of Maryland is also considered one of the scaling partners and has expanded to include additional campuses. And it also expanded the focus from biomedical only to now all STEM. And we definitely want to highlight our partners. We have our postdoctoral association, the National Postdoctoral Association is our amplifying partner. Many of you might have received the email about this webinar from them. They've been actively working with us to really think about how we can have the whole postdoctoral community aware and engaged in our endeavor, as well as the National Association of System Heads. Of course, many of you also received the email about this through them, and they are our backbone organization, really helping to uplift and structure this alliance. And then we have our Mentor Alliance, which is the Aspire Includes Alliance for Faculty Diversity, and you'll be hearing from them in next month's webinar. Next slide. And so our question to you is, after we've heard all about the consortium of systems approach, is your institution part of a collaboration within a consortia of systems? We have about 50% participation at this point. Great. It's nice to see that over half of you are already involved in this kind of systems approaches. And so we're looking forward to hearing also from you and some of the questions you might have. And next slide, please. So a little bit about the structure of how we have approached the system alliance. Each system has a system lead. And that system lead helps to formulate and also structure the system alliance leadership team, which is made up of representatives from each institution within the system. Each institution also has a coordinator, as well as a dean level or associate vice president, vice provost, somebody who's really critical in communicating with the provost what is going on within the alliance. We also have senior personnel on each within each system that might go beyond the leadership team. That might include provosts or department chairs, deans, faculty, and so a myriad of folks who are going to be involved in really thinking through how our systems can approach this pipeline program. We will be engaging in virtual annual meetings, which we already had our kickoff in October, very exciting, as well as engaging across the systems through communications, such as quarterly newsletters or retreats, and participating in emergent subcommittees. And with that, we actually have a subcommittee for each of those 4 areas of effort that I mentioned earlier, which is postdoctoral scholars, mentors, university pathways, as well as academic climate. Next slide. This is a little bit of the structure. We've talked a little bit about that, but we have the executive team that meets regularly, as well as the system alliance leadership teams, which I just mentioned, and the senior provost. And so many of these differing teams come together to really think through the approach for particularly the next year, but over the lifetime of this grant and beyond. Next slide, please. So this is our leadership team. We have 5 PIs. And we have a myriad of folks who are working to make sure that this large system can function. For time, I'm just not going to go through the names, but hopefully you can see our faces. And feel free to ask questions in the chat. Next slide, please. And so I just wanted to again highlight NASH. Thank you very much for setting up this webinar series and for your invaluable contributions to this alliance through facilitating dialogues and collaborations, really encouraging the collaboration across the systems, as well as the project management of this alliance, which, as you might imagine, with the number of institutions, is quite a lift and has been done seamlessly. Next slide. And so again, the role of our amplifying organization, the National Postdoc Association, is really disseminating much of the information that we've gained through our engagement, as well as through the social science research team. They will also be helping us host our annual meeting, which is actually in person, which is in conjunction with the annual NPA meeting, and really thinking through how we might utilize their SMART skills training for our postdoctoral scholars as part of their professional development, as well as potentially recruiting through the NPA. So we're really excited to work with them. Next slide, please. And so some of the activities for year one we just would like to highlight is taking an inventory of the institutional strengths within the system alliances and identify some of the challenges. Each system comes with a number of institutions that have a array of strengths and that have some potential challenges. And so thinking through how the institutions within each system can support and highlight some of those strengths and support each other through the challenges. We're going to be creating system-specific action plans. So again, each system is going to craft their action plan according to their context, hopefully utilizing the core elements of those model partners. And we hope to be hiring fellows starting year two. So stay tuned and look out for emails from us as we delve into the recruitment phase. And then we're going to be establishing communication tools. And thankfully, we will be discussing some of that with you all through our website later today. Next slide. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time, and I would like to look forward to hear from Mark Lawson, who is the director of the President's Postdoctoral Fellowship Program at the University of California System.
Thank you, Blessing, and thank all of you for your interest in the webinar and this program, and this and this really important topic about faculty diversity. And mechanisms to get towards it. So the University of California's President's Postdoctoral Fellowship Program has been a longstanding program for promoting diversity in the professoriate. It was initiated in 1984, so there's quite a bit of history, and the program has been through a few alterations over the years based on not only the growth of the program, sort of revising how to make the program better and improve outcomes, and also managing the legal environment in California, which we call it the Prop 209 era, which is the removal of affirmative action in the use of public funds from the University of California. And that was in 1996. So there's a little bit of history and a number of issues and topics that may not necessarily be obvious from just looking at the program, as it is now, but there's lots of background information about how we got here that the program is able to share. And it's one of the reasons why it's one of the model partners in this alliance. So on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit more about the fellowship program. You'll see I mentioned both the President's Postdoctoral Fellowship Program, the PPFP, and the other thing that we have are Chancellor's Postdoctoral Fellowships. And I'll tell you a little bit about those and how it works. But basically, they are postdoctoral fellowships that are research focused. They don't allow teaching unless it's been, only by exception does it allow teaching. But it focuses on professional development and mentoring to scholars in all fields. And it's not a STEM only fellowship, but it's open to all academic disciplines in the University of California. And it looks for scholars whose research, teaching, and service will contribute to the diversity and equal opportunity. And the University of California, we term this inclusive excellence. and as inclusiveness as being part of being an excellent university and has equal weight with that. And this is an important point to consider when moving programs like this forward. This is data that's a year or two old. I think it came out just as we were entering the pandemic phase, but overall the program is contributing 11% to underrepresented minority hires and 3.2% of the total hires at the UC in the last 5 years. So it's really been making an impact. And as we term it, we're bending the curve as far as accelerating the change in the professoriate there. And I'm going to talk about this a little more detail later, but the program is successful, at least in hiring and retaining faculty. 87% of our fellows achieve, that are hired into the UC, achieve tenure and are retained at 10 years post-hire. By comparison, the general population of open search hires achieve tenure and are retained by the university at just a little bit over at about 3/4, 76.5%. So I'll go into that data a little bit later. But in the chart, what I want to show you is the growth of the program over the years. And that's really occurred. There's a quick question in there from Archie. Why do we use 10 years? Oh, that's to accommodate leaves for maternity and other family leave issues. So we use a 10-year window in order to accommodate a shifting of the tenure clock, which is policy in the UC. So, but what I can show you is there's been considerable growth in the program over the years as the recognition that the program has been effective. And with tweaking with some of the parameters around hiring incentives, which occurred in 2017, 2018, had a big impact on hiring going forward. Our highest year has been like 34 faculty hired of our fellows, which is essentially an entire cohort. It was slightly less in the last year, but what we've had also is emerging as a lot of fellows in the UC signing contracts for employment with a year deferred start date in order to complete a postdoctoral fellowship. And the campuses have been very receptive of that concept, and it's been very successful. So hiring remains fairly strong. So on the next slide, I got a little bit of information to share with you about some of the nuts and bolts of how it's worked, how it's supported by the system. So currently we're at about $5.4 million in direct funding from the Office of the President. Our funds primarily come from state general funds, the state general fund allocation to the University of California. It's a high priority funding initiative. It's actually one of only 5 things for which funding comes out directly before state funds are distributed to the individual campuses. So it's called an off the top allocation. There's only 5 items in that list. It's a very short list, but it's sort of a recognition of the priority of funding. What it means is that it's immune to budget cuts at the university level, at the campus level. The director, I report to the UC-wide vice provost for academic personnel and programs. And as director, I have a dual faculty and administrative appointment. So I'm both a former fellow of the program. I'm faculty in the School of Medicine at UC San Diego. And I'm director of this program, which is housed and run out of the Berkeley campus. So people get confused. I often have 2 emails running around. So our staff is hosted at the Berkeley campus, and we coordinate the support of the fellows across all 10 campuses, which is quite a job, but we have 3 staff that are really adept at doing that. So it's not a huge administrative operation in the sense of people and organization. It's quite efficient in that way, and that allows us to divert almost all of our funding, the majority of our funding towards fellowships and programming for the fellows. So the fellowship is broken up into 2 single years of support. It's up to 2 years of funding at the appropriate salary for your stage of postdoc. You can be awarded this postdoc at any time during your postdoctoral career. The UC has a 5-year total limit for postdoctoral appointments, and that 5 years doesn't mean just the UC. It can mean any work outside the UC done as a postdoc is also included in that. There's a renewal phase at the first year. That's really a check-in point to make sure that mentoring relationships are going as planned, the postdocs progressing as expected and planned, according to what the guidelines of the program. But also many of our fellows are hired after a year and don't renew the fellowship because they're going into faculty positions. The program provides benefits, research funds, and some travel money. The exact salary has a minimum level that's determined by a labor contract, which has been in national news lately. You may or may not know of it. But recently, so our starting salaries for postdocs begin at $60,000 plus. As a fellow, either at the president's or chancellor's level, you qualify for the faculty hiring incentive, which is $425,000. It's an odd number. It has a historical background, but it's $425,000 to the hiring campus. And it's in discretionary state general funds. So there's a lot of flexibility with those funds. They can be used to support salary for the hire if it's an unplanned, off-cycle hire or anything like that. Ideally, the candidates are hired on a funded FTE line, and that $425,000 can be used for things like contributing toward a startup package in STEM or other aspects. Some campuses take a very strong interest in that. For instance, the UC Irvine campus, has, I think, currently in a 5-year window about 30 plus faculty. So they're realizing quite a bit of money that is able to be distributed in different ways because of their creativity with using it. So the institutions do not match that funding. The funding is $85,000 a year over 5 years, which adds up to the $425,000. There's a bunch of questions coming, so I'm going to try to get those as soon as I get to this information. The $85,000 a year pays for most of a step 2 assistant professor hire. We have a few other variances that we have a collaboration with the Mellon Foundation that actually tops that off to a full salary ride for a fellow. And the other important thing is the waiver of open search. So the system-wide faculty senate put in as a policy on their part a waiver of open search so that departments can hire outside their traditional hiring plans opportunistically. And a qualification for that waiver is simply by being a current or former president's fellow or chancellor's fellow. And I'll also like to add that these benefits are available to you as a former fellow for your entire career. So quite often, as I said, we have a long history. We have former fellows who have been in faculty at other institutions, for decades even, and will return to the UC. And upon their return to the UC, they still qualify for these hiring incentives and waivers of open search. So it's a way of trying to recoup our investment in someone even if they go off to another institution. Yeah, Blessing, thank you for that, because I was losing track of what I was trying to say. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide so I can get to the end of this place and get to the questions. So, just to distinguish what the fellows are, we have a centralized application system, which is actually one of the components of this alliance is to build a system that that a broad variety of institutions can use to collect applications for this kind of fellowship. Right now we have 10 different partners. Currently, University of Maryland College Park is the USM partner in this, but that will be expanding. But we have like University of Arizona in here, University of Minnesota system, Georgia Tech is a part of this, NYU is a part of this thing. It's a common application portal for folks to apply to. Essentially to ease and both to get the word out and to ease the process and kind of harmonize the application process so that potential fellows can take advantage of as many programs as they see fit. So in our case, we often see applicants apply to the UC program, but also apply to 1 or 2 of the other programs as well. Often these are geographically determined by the location of the fellow. So we save the awardee and applicant data. It's in a database, and we have an opt-in for dissemination of the data for hiring opportunities or other things. Often campuses will ask us for, everyone in integrative biology for the last 6 years, and we'll be able to, and those that have opted in for the sharing of their personal data, we'll distribute that data, and that often turns into hiring opportunities as well. We also share between institutions in the partnership network. There's a 2-tier review. We have over 200, actually it's more like 250 faculty that read applications for us. That's actually just completed, and we're on our final review for this next cohort beginning on Thursday. And that's another final review by a subdisciplinary panel. We have arts and humanities, social sciences, life sciences, and math, engineering, physical sciences panels. And they are broadly represented. The disciplines are broadly represented there, and they make final determinations of fellowships. After the selections, we rank alternates and also another batch of finalists and refer those to the campuses and ask campuses to support as many as they can locally. And that almost doubles the size of our program. Each campus will support on average of 3 to 4. I think it's like 3.7 average over the system. Additional fellows that they fund locally out of chancellor's discretionary funds or other mechanisms. And that increases the numbers of fellowships. We also have some specialized relationships. The main thing about our program is the review process and the trust that people have that, multiple review by multiple faculty across campus can really identify strong potential, future faculty. And so other private or other campus institutions will tap into our review system in order to fund a fellow in a particular defined discipline, and we develop MOUs for that access as well. Those MOU derived fellows are also qualifying for the benefits of hiring and participate in the program development. So on the next slide, I want to give you a little bit of concept of what the size of the program is. This is just a quick chart made based on survey of earned doctorates data. U.S. domestic URM earned doctorates are in that top blue line. The interesting line that I'd like you to look at is the green line, the second to the bottom line. The green line is the PPFP application numbers. So we hover around 1,000 applicants each cycle. Now, not all of our applicants are underrepresented minority. It's about 3/4 to 80%, and about 60% are female. And so I give you the breakdowns of our applicant pool there. And the reason why it's very broad, number one, not only the legal environment that we work on in California, so the selection for contributions to diversity, those criteria are based on past actions. So it's based on what you do as an applicant and how you've shown that you can be an agent of change as a faculty member. But also what diversity looks like in different disciplines can vary widely. Women in mathematics is considered that, women in physics in general. So we have all of these, we have all of these fellows, with this broad distribution working at individual campuses with the concept that by increasing the pool of highly trained postdoctoral fellows that are competitive for UC faculty positions, that they'll be competitive for hiring in the UC system broadly. And then one last tiny slide, I think I'll go over quite quickly, and that is just this sort of 10-year data that we looked at. So we looked at a cohort of PPFP hires between 1998 and 2005 and followed them out to 2015. And those were these are the numbers of tenured and retained at the 10-year mark. And that's the 87% mark. We took a cohort of the 98-99 hiring year and the 04-05, so the bracketing hiring years of open search hires, and looked at their retention over time, and that's the results there. So what this really does is undermines a common argument about programs like this, that somehow, by weighing diversity, you're somehow compromising research excellence or academic excellence. And in fact, the opposite is true. And this is a really important point to make, because what it shows is that by selecting people who are who are consciously participating in the academic community and addressing it and understand their roles in the professoriate. And it's beyond just their roles as outstanding academics contributing knowledge, but actually their role in the community, have a higher success rate as faculty and are really, worth the investment. So it's a very important piece of data I'd like to share. Now, I saw a million questions pop up. Blessing, do you want to help me go through those, or?
We're going to have the other two presenters, and then we'll go back to Q&A later.
Excellent.
Thank
okay,
you.
Thanks for those questions. If you have any more, go ahead and put them in.
Okay, I'm Robin Krasinski, and I'm the Assistant Vice Provost for Grad Student Development and Postdoctoral Affairs at UMBC, but I'm also the Director of the Promise Academy Alliance. We are grateful to have NSF AGIP funding starting in 2018 and carrying us through this year, and this is one of the core model partners that we use to scale up for RISE-UPP. So I'll tell you a bit about what we did within our system. Next slide, please. So we are a unique system that has a broad range of different kinds of universities in it. We have R1s, R2s, HBCUs. We have regional comprehensives that are focused on undergraduate teaching. We also have research centers and other kinds of global research and educational centers. So we are a robust system in a tiny state. We're all within a few hours of each other, which does lend itself nicely to us getting together in person on occasion. But that's us in a nutshell. Next slide, please. So in our alliance in 2018, we started with 5 institutions. Blessing mentioned that we have 6 now because we have an additional one that's joined us, but we started with 5. That includes a medical school, an R1, an R2 that became an R1, and 2 regional comprehensives, one of which is aspiring to be an R2. Next slide. The interesting thing about this is that all of our campuses play a different role. We all potentially have postdocs on our campus, although the number of those postdocs vary, but the different campuses lend different professional development strengths to the fellows that participate in our program. And this was something that was intentionally designed. So for example, the medical school has quite a bit of NIH grant writing professional development that they offer. And that's something that may be less common at a more teaching-centric institution. The R1 offers, our flagship, which is an R1, offers quite a bit of mentorship training and leadership training. The University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where I am, which just recently became an R1, has a robust history working with undergrad and grad school diversity programs and mentoring those kinds of scholars with unique programs that we could build upon. And our comprehensives, of course, have a vast array of teaching expertise and really are pushing the pedagogical boundaries and thinking about how to be inclusive in their classrooms. And so again, all of our institutions have assets that they bring to the Alliance that we thought would be useful for our fellows, regardless of where they're housed at each of those institutions. Next slide. So we have what we call a decentralized model, which means our fellows are picked up at the different campuses and they're hired at the different campuses through their own campus programs. But then they do have things that they do together. We have some of our fellows are on what are called the predetermined pathway, which means that there is an intention by that campus to retain that particular fellow. So a fellow might be picked up at the beginning of their fellowship, spend 2 years in this postdoctoral or pre-professoriate kind of position, but the intention is that they're going to convert into tenure track at that institution. We also have a flexible program where the idea is that there is maybe not a pathway at their fellowship institution to convert, but with the help of the Alliance, we will place them or match them with another institution within the university system. And this is essential because we know that postdoctoral scholars often only are exposed to one kind of institution, and that's where they're doing their fellowship. And so we work hard to expose our fellows to the different types of institutions within the system. Next slide, please. So as I said, the USM approach is a decentralized approach compared to what Mark just described in California. I won't walk through all of these pillars, but at the various stages that a fellow experiences, There are various roles of the institution and of the alliance. Unlike the California system, where all of the finances is happening centrally at the system office, in our model, we've asked the institutions to step up and pay for the salary of the fellows. That also means that the departments are responsible for how that fellow is hired, that the deans, department chairs, and provosts often are working together for what the model for conversion is going to be for that fellow. But there is quite a bit of assistance that's provided by the alliance, by the collaboration. So for example, in onboarding, the second pillar here, an institution will assign a primary mentor from their campus, but at the alliance level, we're providing secondary mentors, we're providing a skills assessment, we're making sure that they have networking available to them, both in terms of their peers. Our fellows meet monthly as a peer group, but also in terms of intellectual collaboration across the alliance. So in this way, you can see that there are institutional roles and alliance roles. And then of course, our system office plays a critical role in helping make sure that that collaboration is nurtured and fostered as well. So there's different ways in which there's advocacy by the alliance and different roles that the institution plays. And this really facilitates all the different types of activities to participate. Next slide. So this is just a visual image of our fellows. We have 10 fellows thus far in the 4 years of our program. And so they've been at 4 of our campus so far, but I'm happy to announce that the 5th campus in our alliance, Towson University, just hired their first fellow, and they're starting in March of this year. So an 11th fellow is starting. And as you can see, there's lots of colored boxes at the end of anticipated fellows that will start later this year or starting this fall. But we've had, again, cohorts of anywhere from 2 to 4 fellows. And even next year, we're anticipating anywhere between 5 and 7 fellows. And so this has been a growing program, again, with fellows at all of our different participating institutions. Next slide. And I've grayed out some of the more colorful images represent the 5 fellows that have converted into tenure track positions. And so out of the 10 we've had 5 fellows have been offered tenure track positions within our university system or outside of our university system, which is wonderful. Next slide. So we do have a leadership team. The great thing about this is that it facilitates the collaboration. We have representatives from all 5 participating campuses. Again, this year we've added a 6th campus. They participate in our leadership team meetings. We meet bi-monthly. Bi-weekly, we meet twice a month, which is wonderful. And in this way, we're all, again, doing the asset mapping. We're talking about what departments this will work for, what the obstacles and barriers are to participation, how we can support our fellows. And we've developed a lot of tools that we're going to share with the other systems participating in our alliance. Things like onboarding checklists, things like recruitment guidelines, anything that we can do to help make sure that the expectations for mentors, mentees, and departments are clear. We coordinate together statewide professional development, leveraging those strengths of the different institutions. And we're hoping to collaborate with our system office to really implement system level policies and practices that will institutionalize or systematize our program. Next slide. So again, the wonderful results we've had is that 5 of 10 of our fellows have converted into the tenure track, 4 of those within our university system, which is our goal. 1 of them we lost to a fabulous campus in California. 1 of them is in the process of hopefully converting this year. That process is underway. And then we have 4 fellows that are still in the program that hope to convert. So they're either still in their first 2 years of fellowship or have extended into a 3rd year, but we're still kind of playing the matchmaking process with them and trying to get them placed and converted. And then we had 1 that left for industry, but I will claim that her big toe is still in the system, and we hope to recruit her back from her stint in industry very much. And while 5 out of 10 may seem like an okay result, we're actually really excited about it. Nationally, only about 17% of postdocs convert into tenure track positions, even though about 80% of them want to. And so all of our underrepresented postdocs, we're really hoping to recruit and retain for the long term, but we've had a great experience thus far. Last slide. And then briefly, just I hope you get a chance to talk to some of our campuses, but we've had lots of impacts beyond these fellows, everything from campuses being much more open to embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion as part of their promotion and tenure practices, things that they're doing differently regarding their recruitment practices. We also have a great initiative that we'd love to tell you about another time regarding departmental readiness. So assessing whether or not departments are ready to truly be inclusive colleagues that will retain these scholars once they're recruited. Again, we're hoping to do more with our systems to enact real system change at a sustainable level. And of course, we want to help other systems think about this. And so our goal is to have more infrastructure, not only within our system, but then of course, across systems to really facilitate more retention of these fellows nationwide. Last slide. Okay, so if you have any questions, we'll save it for the Q&A, but I'm really happy to have had the chance to talk to you about that.
Thanks so much, Robin, for that handoff. Hi, everyone. Leslie Gonzalez, she, her pronouns. I'm an associate professor at Michigan State. And Dawn and I, Dr. Dawn Culpepper and I, we're here to tell you a little bit about the social science research team's research agenda, the questions we're pursuing. Dawn is our fearless research team leader, and I'm along for the ride to hopefully be a good thought partner. Next slide, please. So anyone,
Board 1700. Quick like that, Charlotte, we're about on the boarding process.
so anyone who's been in the diversity and equity space in STEM or in higher education in general knows that some of the key challenges in this work is really distinguishing between what is diversification, so increasing the number of faculty from minoritized groups, versus deep core transformation, very much to the point that Robin was just referencing. So Dawn and I start from the perspective that diversification and transformation are analytically different, and we need to go ahead and design our study around those differences. We also know, anybody who's in this space, that diversity work in higher education, particularly in academia, really has to penetrate multiple what are called nested contexts. And so with the next slide, please. And so with that sort of background in mind, Dawn and I have been thinking about the social science research agenda along these lines. We want to really study and observe the differences between diversification and transformation. And we want to do that across different key contexts. One being the department, another the discipline, institutions, and the state systems. All of these layers or contexts work together to either really shape great atmospheres in which postdocs experience and want to stay in the academy, or that can ultimately push them out. Of course, it's more complex than that, but I'll let Dawn go ahead and pick up here.
Thanks, Leslie. So we're really thinking about readiness in the context of 2 points in time. So one is the conversion of postdocs into tenure and tenure track roles. And then the second is the readiness to retain and advance postdocs as they advance along the tenure track and hopefully are tenured and promoted. So we're thinking about this change over the long term, and also thinking about this idea of readiness in the context of different kinds of disciplinary, institutional, and system level factors that might shape the experience of individual postdocs. Next slide, please. So our proposed model, the way that we've started to think about this work and design our protocols and our instruments is really thinking, again, as Leslie mentioned, about the way that state systems interact with institutions, interact with academic units, both at the college and the department level, and how these things are nested within disciplines as well. And based on the literature, we've identified several different kinds of organizational features that we think will be at play as we study this change within our study. So we're thinking about issues of culture and climate. We're thinking about policies, programs, and practices, norms and expectations, the extent to which training and education is provided, how resources are allocated, both financial, but also resources in terms of support, leadership, the kinds of mindsets of leaders, and the kinds of cognitive frameworks and mental models of the faculty that are involved in thinking about this change. And we think that all of these features will then feed into the extent to which departments, institutions, and state systems are experiencing success or have the conditions of readiness. Next slide, please. So our preliminary research design is that we're thinking about a multi-institutional case study. This is going to include interviews with postdoctoral fellows, department faculty, institutional administrators, and system level leaders to understand how these contexts and organizational features facilitate or undermine organizational diversification and transformation. We're also really excited about the prospect of developing tools that could be used outside of our research study and can be translated to other contexts and other practitioners who are interested in doing this kind of work around readiness. A final piece and the real benefit of doing this work within the Rise Up context is that I think that we're going to be able to really think about how different aspects of state and political context shape the way that this diversity and transformation work is being influenced and is being received. And so we see this as a really timely and much needed contribution to the literature that will help both higher education as a field, but also practitioners who are doing this work on the ground. So stay tuned for our results, and we look forward to sharing those with you over the years. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Rohit Tandon. I'm with NASH, and we're supporting the backbone for the Rise Up Alliance. And we wanted to introduce you to our brand new Rise Up website. If you go to riseup.org, you will see, let me bring up the website so you can see it. This is our brand new website. It just launched at, 4:53 p.m. Eastern time today. So you are the first folks to see it. Basically, from here, you can get a glimpse of the information about Rise Up, basically what it is, who our model partners are, a little bit of information about Rise Up by the numbers, the number of systems, the number of campuses, the number of partners, our mentor alliance, a little bit of information about our scaling partners as well. You'll get information about our vision, our people, our areas of activity. Just gives you a snapshot of what the Rise Up Alliance is about, who is involved, and what we are focusing on in terms of our areas of activity. We are building out more information on the website, so keep checking back on the website for additional information. We'll have resources, we'll have additional news and events. We're going to be posting a monthly newsletter out here as well. And every quarter, we'll highlight one of our participating systems. You can see the webinar series here. So we have today's webinar. After this webinar is over, we will post a link to the recording here. So anyone that missed it can come back here and view the recording. You'll see that we have our next webinar scheduled on February 28th with the Aspire Alliance, and you can just click here to register. And then in March, we'll have a deep dive into UC's President's Postdoctoral Fellowship Program, which you heard a little bit about today, but this will be a more detailed overview of the program, and you'll be able to register for that shortly as well. So all of our monthly webinar series information will be here on this page. And once the webinar is over, you'll be able to come back here for the recording. We also have additional upcoming events that you'll be able to see on this calendar as we start scheduling them. But it's an easy way for you to see what is upcoming for Rise Up and what events you'd like to participate in. So it's a bit sparse right now, but we are going to be adding information to the website on a regular basis. So keep checking back. You can also click contact us if you want to find out more information or be kept in the loop with what's happening with Rise Up. You just fill out your information and we'll add you to our list. So any questions about the website? Great. With that, I will turn it back over to Blessing or Rebecca.
I see there were a number of questions in the chat that it looks like many of which were answered. If anybody has any kind of last questions that were not addressed, please feel free to unmute or also just put it in the chat. We have a few minutes left. Thank you for all these wonderful questions as well. Okay. We did it right on time. Great.
Yeah, it looks like we did it. So thank you all very much for attending. Please do reach out to us if you have specific questions that did not get answered today. I will remind you that I saw many questions about the program from the University of California that Mark Lawson was speaking of. We will be doing a deep dive in that program in the end of March. At the end of February, we will hear from the Aspire Alliance. Not sure, Blessing, that you mentioned, this work is funded by the National Science Foundation as part of their Includes Alliance. We were thrilled to receive, as a group, all of us together, $10 million over 5 years, which is making all of this possible. And we are very strongly committed to sharing everything that we're learning with the broader network through NASH and through NPA. So very glad to have all of you with us who are not part of the Rise Up Alliance itself. We know that we'll have lots of things to help you find and learn as we do as we go along. So we are, I think that we're wrapping up now, and thank you very much for coming. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.